Somebody get me off of this. Now she know God, smoke from all that. I can't take pity on men on this guy.
Okay. So let's see. All right, so the idea here is that, you know, my attitude is that we're you guys are over there. My attitude is that we're trading baseball cards. The baseball cards happen to be ideas. And there's an ethic to that, and you offer and you're interested in. But that's maybe just me. I'm an attitude collector. I take the trade, you know. It's like, hey, here's a pair of scissors made out of pure diamond. And you're like, hey, here's a turd I found. I think it's a bear turd. And it's like, no, it looks more like a I think that might be more likely a rat turd. Thank you. And I put it in my little turd collection and whatnot. And so Hythloday was like, no, you should help people out when they're making a mistake. They're working on an engine, they're fucking up the engine. You should help them out. Say, hey, you're breaking the engine. So this is part of a series called How to Philosophy Better. And what this one is this is a list of 7 words that if you can get an understanding of each one of them, you know, you got to build your own understanding of them. They create like a net inside of which you can build a worldview. They touch on all the things. Now, on all the things that you need, or that you might need in your worldview. All the ideas you might need to build. Now, I'm not saying they're the fundamental 7 things or the only 7 things. No, they're it's like a grid, a matrix, a crystalline matrix, inside which, through the combination of these ideas, you can philosophize about, you know, a really large space of problems. And you can combine your reasoning so that the way you reason in one area is compatible with the way you reason in another. So, which is super important. They're not fundamental in the sense of the only 7. You could make other lists like this, other terms. But, I am starting. So, so here they are. This can help you philosophize better. Now, I'm not going to go into each of these words in detail right now. The idea is to cover them, to cover the 7 words. By the way, Barklord was going to have a hangout or something at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central on the Barklord channel. I hope to take part in that in a couple hours. My wife's gone for the weekend. She's helping at a fundraiser for a friend of ours' daughter. Won an award, but to go do the thing she's awarded, she needs to raise money as well. Okay, so the 7 words in this list. First of all, philosophy. Here's the things. I'll help get you started on these words. Now, you have to build your own concept, and then it'll be different or at least distinct from mine. But philosophy, the important thing about philosophy and the art of philosophy is, first of all, remember it's an activity, because it's a weird word where we call philosophy the thing that you make when you do philosophizing. When you do philosophy, we also call the result a philosophy. It's kind of like if a furniture maker wasn't called a furniture maker, we just called that furniture-ing. You know, and the stuff that you make is also called furniture. And then using the furniture, but that's different than making furniture. Okay, with philosophy, it's got a little more confused, because what you do in philosophy, the rest of your head start is you decompose appearances, right, into other ideas, or recompose it, you could say, into other ideas. Someone that likes to use reduction type techniques, data reduction techniques, the model is that you break a complex idea into a set of simple ideas. So in philosophy, you decompose or recompose appearances, and you compose ideas, compose or construct ideas, right? So in the reduction model, you take a complex idea, you transform it into a set of simpler ideas, which you could use to compose, which is to transform in the other direction, back into the original idea. And then you can use this simple idea as a model, but also you could just you get 10 simpler ideas behind this, you can, take 3 or 4 of them and use them to make some other philosophical product, some idea. All right, so philosophy is about transforming ideas. Logic and things like that are valid transformations, valid inferences. But really, in the broad sense, it's just consciously doing that transformation, taking part in it. All right, skepticism. This does not mean doubt, but doubt is fundamentally part of skepticism, what people call doubt. It's just not the perspective that the skeptic has. Basically, the idea is, with skepticism, is about thinking. Thinkingism, reflectionism, that you can always think something more deeply, because let's say you do this reduction and you take a complex thing and you break it down in these pieces and it turns out really useful, like in physics. You look at the real world, you break it down into just some of the components you found important, mass, time, space, well, I want to say the measurements of time, the measurements of space, measurements of field values, and temperatures. And so you can break it down into a set of simplifications that are really good at recomposing at least certain more complex things, like a complex physical system with the simpler scientific ideas. But you could also have decomposed that into a different set of rules, just in principle. So in skepticism, there's always more reason to keep, it's an ongoing process. We compose and decompose ideas. These are actually transformations of one set of ideas into another set of ideas, and sometimes they're 2 directional mappings, and sometimes they're not. I like to go for the 2-dimensional kind, the 2-directional kind. And so, just in principle, that process is always open. It's just by definition, it's meant to continue, or at least it always can continue. It's not to say you keep thinking on a subject. You might decompose it into a set of ideas you're happy with, but you're mortal and there's billions of other people. So in general, it never ends as a point that has to be taken into account. If and while you're thinking about things, you could always think deeper, you could always get better. All right, we have relativism, which of course people mistake for nihilism. This is an idea of how you do build that knowledge in a skeptical world, where it's about the relationships between things. We have so many, every relationship we have with something, for example, me and you right now, or me and the earth, we have a velocity that separates us and it connects us. It's the distance, if I'm holding one end of a steel beam and you're holding the other end, that both connects us and it's also what separates us. And it's an example of a relationship. And since we have so many relationships in this network, statistically, things become identifiable as nodes of relationships. And these are things we identify as things in themselves, but really they're just one end of many relationships, and ends up, they're where relationships bundle. And so that's what relativism is about. And again, like with skepticism, even if you're not a skeptic, even if you believe there's absolute knowledge possible, you as a sane person know you're not going to get the absolute version. So your epistemology still needs to be skeptical. So there's plenty of people in science that, think they've figured out how the world works. But when arguing with other scientists that might have different views and stuff, use the skeptical epistemology. In other words, it's the show me state. You have to have your evidence in terms of appearances from the film strip that you can show me. And that's what an experiment is. It's just you set up a situation that you can then start and watch and see with your own eyes, or hear the Geiger click, or smell the sulfur, whatever, you end up having to sense something that, because you know the construction of the device, you can follow the relationships or logical inferences back and apprehend an idea that you can then use in your philosophy, building other ideas or decomposing other ideas. Relativism is similar. Even if you believe there's an absolute truth, human beings obviously are dealing with our relationships to our environment, including other people and whatnot. And we're limited to that. Society. You have to include society. Now, in a lot of ways, a list like this, you can make a whole list for society, how to philosophize by society. I'm giving it a short thing here. But your relationship with everybody else, and including the economics and exchanges of, emotional economics as well, who appreciates and feels appreciated and whatnot. What is your concept of that network, of that web? Spirituality. Now, as most of you will already know, I don't believe in metaphysics. I believe in the physical world. But it's not to say that there's no spirituality. This is the spiritual universe. This is it right here. And the word spirit, this is a word where the etymology is informative as you're trying to break down a word used so many different ways here. Where does it really come from? Well, it comes from, in English, from Latin, for the word for breath, for breathing. And in most languages I have read, it comes from the word for breathing, because basically it's the quality, like, hey, that thing is red. Red is this quality, this visual quality certain things have. We could categorize by the similarity. You can have an apple and a stop sign, and they're both red. Spirituality is just a word for the concept of a living thing, living things are very different from unliving things. Certainly a rock is very different from a fox, but also a living fox is different from a dead fox. And within a second or two of the fox, dying, with close inspection, you could tell the difference, even though it's the same body. And in many ways, you would say it looks like the same thing. And so spirit is an interesting thing because it's morphological, but not in just 3 dimensions, but like in the full 3 dimensions plus time, right? It's the behavior of something that makes us realize it's alive. When they first looked into the little drops of water and saw these things swimming around, and there's also specks of, decayed leaf floating around, they could tell which was which because of this fact that living things exhibit this behavior. And spirituality is your philosophy about living things. For example, are they all important? Do they all have rights? Are all their opinions valid in some sense? Are they, et cetera, et cetera? And it's super important since you're a living thing. And for anything to matter at all, I think you'll find that, it has to matter to a living thing. Materialism is, for a skeptic, since this is the basic thing, the regular substance idea of materialism, which is the etymology of the word actually, the timber of what makes things solid, that's on the other side of the film strip. That's one of the metaphysical ideas. This is a great get-up, isn't it? And so, as a relativistic skeptic, my base and foundation, what I'm working from, is the information in the film strip. So for me, materialism is more material consequence. What matters, a material fact. What is actually pertinent, a measure of how pertinent something is. So substance is always non-zero pertinence. Anything sitting here, it's mass. It's, it's having electromagnetic interactions with things or whatever it's doing physically. And so even if it's not important to me very much, it has an impact on the reality that I'm embedded in. ideas and emotions can be material, for example, in determining the motive of a murder or if someone had a motive. So it's very important that materialism be mixed with spirituality, because in terms of material implication, it matters what living things go through. That doesn't mean that I believe it's possible to formulate an absolute sense or some religion about how living things treat each other. That, like, because I'm not going to say it's immortal, that the eagle swoops down and grabs a fish out of the lake. My lake just melted. Yeah, it's so nice. I'm not going to say that's absolutely wrong or anything, but I'm going to say that that interchange and all of those kinds of interchanges, and especially those with humans, since we are human, we have to deal with, and that they matter. All right. Last of the 7 words, art and a philosophy of art, right? You have an art of philosophy that we start with, and then a philosophy of art. I think it's crucial that you have a philosophy of art, of, your opinion on, you know it when you see it. You know what you like. What kind of things do you like? Could you predict if you saw the description of some kind of an art show, be it music or painting or whatever? Could you guess whether you'd like that kind of art? Also, is there principles behind it? Is it because of certain color palettes you like? Is it because of the messages that you prefer? Is it because you like abstractions and it's abstract, or the metaphors, or the domain, or because your friend painted it and you're interested in how your friend thinks? Or, do you have an intentional description? Because that's good to have. And it's an interesting subject to do it, because often you can't put your finger on why you liked that movie so much. I enjoy trying to do that, and so I know it's actually very difficult, though. I always have a lot of theories on why I like something. There's this inherent mystery. Art is a very good subject for this. Again, we're talking about things that, if you think about them, will help exercise your mind. And then, and so it includes going, all art isn't very important. It's just superficial. It's just for fun. Poetry's just for, so people had time in the evening after they worked on the farm, or whatever you want. It could be dismissive, any of these subjects. You could have a dismissive philosophy, like many of you will, about the spirituality, for example. I'm just saying it's important to go ahead and grab those positions, because then among them, you can construct basically, every kind of idea that you might have as part of a worldview, right? And then an important part of art goes back to society. Where was that? Okay. It's after relativism. There we go, society. What about other people? Like, I have this idea that there's movies and things that I don't like that I can still recognize it was well made, or it's good art in some sense, that I don't like. Like, I don't like the message, or something about it makes me not like it. But when somebody else likes it, I can go, yeah, I can see why. You and me are on a group in society here, and we're on the board of the film museum, and we're deciding to have these are kinds of things, examples you could think of ahead of time helps. But we're gonna have a what do they call it? A film show, a film festival of the 10 films that everybody should see, or something. And we put one on the list that I don't like. I would have rather put a different one on there, but I saw, what? It's a good film. I've seen it. This is how I thought about it. The fact that it made me think, and somebody did it carefully, and it's not schlock, and it's not, certain things that hopefully we would all agree. But again, you could see some people putting in movies that people would think was schlock in such a list. So it's always a matter of society. And so in your view of art, this is another good thing about art, is, in a sense, it's inconsequential. You can practice disagreeing with people on art, right? How to disagree and live and let live, and have the conversation because it's interesting, but go ahead and argue, is Die Hard a Christmas movie or not? in the end, you could get heated about it, and obviously there's no need to. And so it's a good place to practice social ideas, so that your idea of art is, I can characterize what kind of art I tend to like. I can characterize and analytic reasons, what ties together, what that art has in common. It's action. Okay, and then why do you like action films or whatever, right? And then socially, how do you discuss this or work on it with other people? What if you were, just for fun, trying to make a list of the top 100 movies and negotiate what goes on this list, and then you're gonna make a joint blog on them. All right, just to prove that I'm not saying these are totally fundamental words, and there's a lot of other words, I'm gonna give a bonus list of some bonus words for extra credit. And I think you can see, well, I'm not going to go into this, but it's possible to notice that this list of words, all of them can be discussed in terms of the 7 words that I just said. On the other hand, I could have used these 4 words in my list of 7 words, and the ones that I took out to replace with these would have been in the bonus words, and it would have been in the other way around. You can talk about liberty in terms of society. I believe you need a society in order to have liberty. There's a relationship there. And so since there's a relationship there, you can, these 7 words are like the X, Y, and Z axis. And you can use other vectors, these other words, as those axes. So anyway, these words, liberty. John Stuart Mill wrote a great thing on liberty, and the funny thing is how the anti-taxitarians have taken over the word libertarianism. Liberty, according to John Stuart Mill, the main it's not government. On Liberty by John Stuart Mill, it's about society. It's about people sneering at you or even throwing rocks or not letting you have a good job or whatever. That's the biggest impedance to liberty. I would add also that liberty is a good 21st century concept because it has measurable quantities, like your liberty of movement. Where can you get to? Do you need to pay money to go on the roads between here and there? Can you walk in principle? Do you have actual access to, more reasonable transportation, flying? What is your liberty? And not that liberty should be absolute, but you can measure these things. What can you say? What can't you say? Where can you say it? In general, it's like free range of a variable. What is the intervals in which and how many dimensions of that freedom do you have? You can measure that. I think it takes a society to have liberty. I do not think the absolute liberty of just being like a lone man in the woods is that's just liberty from other men. And that's the idea that that's liberty is just because other men have oppressed each other so much, have oppressed us so much, and we them, if we're all we. But in that situation, without the help of cooperation with other human beings, you can't go very far, and there aren't any roads. So it's slower to go everywhere, and you have less kinds of things that you can accomplish because of the limitations on the tools and lacking the benefit of cooperation. Now, that could suit you, but I'm just saying it's not really the measurable kind of liberty. Or rather, when you measure it, it's actually less. But there's trade-offs, so you could prefer it, sure, but there's less amount of individual liberty. Might even make you a better person or whatever. These are all topics that are involved with the discussion of liberty. Progress. Now, progress is not automatic. I personally believe in progress, that we can progress. Not everybody believes that. Some people believe it's a degeneration from the good old days. Some people believe that it's always a cycle, and any so-called progress, that there's regress, and it's really going in a cycle. Concept of progress is really important, and it's a relativistic solution in the end. Everything else is a tricky dead end. I believe, because, you know, progress is relative to what your goals are, and then you find your goals might be in error and things need to be adjusted. And so progress is like taking a step forward, but it doesn't say anything really about where you're pointing. So it's sort of a general purpose idea. So why would you even talk about it? Well, because we can progress, we can get to places. It's like, I don't see a path across the river. We could build a bridge. I mean, if you keep thinking about it skeptically, then you know there's ways to make progress towards your goal. You might not be able to go straight at your goal. You might need to start by making your the tools you'll need to make the thing you'll need to go in that direction. Morality is important, of course. Morality is about how we treat things in groups that we believe we're a part of. We're all in the human species, so I don't think anybody can deny that we're all in a totally identifiable group. So how you treat other people in general is automatically a question that exists, and it's in the topic of morality. But there's also, how do you treat people in your family? How do you treat yourself, the identity group, the group of one thing, you, you know, your county and township. How do you treat all of these groups? Ethics is a similar thing, but it's more reductionist. Ethics is limited to things that you can specify. It accepts rules of thumb and heuristics, and it is not about groups that you belong to directly. It is about a group that you belong to, but it's more about an area that you belong to, and you have a role in that group. So it's less about a group you belong to and how do you treat everybody in it. It's more how, well, I am the patient and he's the doctor. How should I treat him? What's the ethics of treating my doctor? Or I guess more people would worry about, I'm the doctor, he's the patient. What are the ethics of how this one role treats this other role? And of course, they're still, you know, in one sphere of you know, consideration, and they have roles within that. And then politics, which is, how do you actually accomplish this cooperation or collaboration we're talking about with liberty? How do you, you know, in society, how are you going to structure, or what structures will you refuse to impose? How are you going to let it naturally be structured? How are you going to, you know, avoid, if somebody wanted just a totally natural structure of human interaction, then you need a system of avoiding getting in the way of that system, right? Because you sort of naturally, through politics, there ends up being this influence on how society is structured. And so in a sophisticated philosophy that reaches up into the affairs of man and interactions of mankind and womankind and animal kind, for that matter, dog kind and cat kind. And politics is really one of the most difficult subjects. It's like the opposite of art, where art is easy to get heated about, but it should be easy, hopefully, to remember that people get to have their own opinions. Politics, people, even more important to let people have their own opinions, but it's even harder to see that they have to be let to do that. And of course, there's situations where it's like, well, no, this is a real conflict. How are we going to resolve this? We can't both, there is no compromise. And I think we get to a time through democracy where we actually have a system where there's always a compromise, and the compromise might be a process that takes a long time to be resolved, and people just have to be able to accept that. And that all comes from politics. All right, so I'm going to go see if anybody's over. Hey, Barklord, did you see my comment? Because I went through a run-through to see how you could start that, assuming you're on a computer. Danish physicists, hello. All right, don't know if you guys are still here or not, but those are the only two comments. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and remember.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them all, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.